let me bring in a warm welcome to everyone, a good morning, a warm good Friday morning that we are in. I'm aware each one of us are working relentlessly to bring in our purpose to serve great food with great experience and great value to our consumers every single day. We're maniacal and we're not leaving any stone unturned to manifest our aspiration that Sanjay has been talking of, our leaders have been talking of, to become the best restaurant operator in the country. And while I know you all are focusing immensely on your day-to-day work, I think it's always fair sometimes to take a step back, refresh, rejuvenate, and then get back into action. As the Chief People Officer for Sapphire Foods, that's one dream that I have always festered, and we've heard our leadership talk enough and more about our spikes of excellence. Making Sapphire a great place to work is a dream that I have fostered for a very long time, 4 years that I have been now. In fact, not just great place, I want it to be one of the best places to work. And I know each one of us are working towards this collective goal. We've done many things in past and we'll continue to do great things in future also. But I think one of the biggest milestones in this journey of making Sapphire a best place to work is diversity, and more importantly, I think inclusion as a way of life at Sapphire Foods. That's something that I have become maniacal about. I know Sanjay has been urging me and nudging me to take it up. And finally, 4th year going strong, I think I've taken this and taken it as a mandate upon ourselves. Now with this event that we are starting off, I won't say it's the start of our D&I journey, but definitely start of a promise that we are making to the larger audience and the organization that we will make it a serious business. It is not an International Women's Day celebration that we are having, but it is actually diversity and inclusion that we are really focusing strongly on, and it will bring in a lot of value to each one of us. Today, you've already heard our guest speakers speak enough and more. I know the teams have heard both Perizaad and Sanjay, but that should not stop me from introducing Perizaad. Perizaad, a very warm welcome. Thank you for being available at such a short notice. I know you were actually vacationing outside and when you agreed to be a part of this. So thank you so much. Team to Perizaad needs no introduction, but just to bring to fore, she's a multifaceted, successful personality who's a strong proponent of diversity and inclusion. She's been able to create a niche space for herself in diverse portfolios. Please welcome Perizaad Zorabian. She's an acclaimed Indian cinema actor, now a whole-time director at Zorabian Chicken, a company that was started by her father almost 4 decades ago. Perizaad has more feathers to her cap. She's a gold medalist from Mumbai University and an MBA in marketing from City University of New York. She's also a Western classical ballet dancer. Just like any one of us, she works relentlessly with her passionate team to take ownership in the brand and its values, making Zorabian a unique proposition in this large-scale commercial market. A very, very warm welcome, Perizaad, to you, and a big thank you for agreeing to be here.
Thank you so much for that fantastic introduction. Thank you.
And Sanjay needs no introduction to any one of us. He's a tall leader. He's steering. Sorry?
If you say anything more, people will log off. So
no, they won't log off, Sanjay.
No, I want to hear Sanjay, so I want to hear her.
Yes, Sanjay is a tall leader to everyone who knows and someone who doesn't know Perizaad and Jatin there. He's guiding us to our North Star in these difficult times. I think he's one person who steered us together and kept the team together and has nurtured the dream of D&I. In fact, Sanjay's got 2 strong women, I'm counting myself in his leadership team. Thank you, Sanjay, for being that inclusive leader. And without much ado, like Sanjay said, I don't want to put you guys off to sleep. Let me open the floor and start off with a short question. to Perizaad, just to set a context, Perizaad. Perizaad, you've been both by default and design in an industry that is traditionally male dominated. And you, in both the places, you seem to have found a very niche and committed place for yourself. Uh, Run us through your journey, recount that journey, both as a leader and as a woman for us, Perizaad.
Sandhydeep, I'm the eldest child. I have two younger siblings, and I grew up in a home where there was complete gender equality, right? And I think you perceive the world the way you've been treated. So since childhood, the chores were kind of distributed equally between me and my two brothers. Our deadlines were the same. So when you've grown up in that sense of equality, that's the only way, or that's your only reality, and that's the only way you kind of view the world. So as I stepped out as an adult, into the world when I went to the US to do my MBA, or when I kind of worked as an actor for like a decade, I think, or at my journey with Zorabian, I don't think I ever walked in with any baggage of being a woman or being a girl. And I've never ever walked in with a baggage of, playing the victim card in any sort of way. So, my whole, whenever I've been asked, whether as an actor, was it tough for you? It was fantastic. I've always been treated with a lot of love, with a lot of respect. And it's also because I gave back that respect, and I kind of, worked as an equal. I didn't expect any privileges because, I was a girl, or I don't expect any privileges here because I am my father's daughter, running the business. My father gives me as much galis as he would give my brothers if they were messing up, right? And as long as I'm being treated an equal, I've been good to go. And I think, whilst yes, both poultry more than kind of the performing arts is a male-dominated industry. I promise you, I have bought soya, makkah, and been handling purchases for my father when I just moved back from the US. I've sold chickens live and done live trading and spoken to this buy and that buy, which are very conventional Muslim traders who only treated me with love and respect. I would negotiate makkah and soya, Jayesh buy and this buy and that buy. And no one has ever treated me as, as less of a person. And I think it's because I've always walked the talk as an equal, and I've kind of, yeah, so it's been actually, I'm sorry, but it's been really wonderful for me, since I've been a little girl.
Superb, awesome. I think one theme that I see genuinely originating from what you've shared is that if I as a woman, or anyone as a woman feels discriminated, you will end up being discriminated. But I think the confidence and the passion that you bring to your work and to the life will probably help you dissipate if any male dominance exists in the society, right?
Totally.
Beautifully said. I think that's one pointer that I will note down in my chronicles for sure. Uh, Sanjay, you've been a strong proponent of diversity ever since I've known you. How do you view it from the perspective that when people say it's a male-dominated industry society, how do you see diversity being blossoming there?
So, firstly, Perizaad's story could be my family story. And I think that's a strong, and as I reflect and I think about, perhaps that's one of the strong enablers to greater inclusiveness. So, Perizaad, I have an elder sister and two brothers. So, we are two brothers. And just quite like you said, chores in the house were divided right across. So I think gender equality was a given, was never talked about. I think perhaps dad and mom went one step further to say all all human being inclusiveness, including caste and socio-economic type and so on. So I think that's so confident women, I just perhaps see come from confident households. And that's one thought that just comes to my mind. Having said what Perizaad said, that, I mean, if you're confident, automatically you are able to rise above issues, close, quote unquote, male dominated or gender inequality in the space. But so I think we have to recognize that undoubtedly there is gender bias, in society, in the corporate world, in different industries. I don't think we must brush that over. So that's important. And yet, as Perizaad beautifully said, that if you've got, women have the confidence, they're able to rise over it. But I'm sure in many ways, small or otherwise, she's faced issues, but she's been able to tackle those issues and say, I'm larger than, some of those issues. But I think for me as a leader, I can't say that that's good enough. There are issues that exist. We know some of the issues that exist in our organization, and therefore inclusiveness is taking direct action in many ways to improve this diversity ratio. So this is, I'll say that we've got to recognize that there are issues, and we've got to recognize that we've got to take action to improve inclusiveness in our, part of the world. Was I clear here?
Yes, absolutely.
Can I just add on to what Sanjay said? And I want to add on from a work perspective, because I'm at Zorabian. I've been like, when I walked in and started working with Dad, I was the only woman in the office, right? And it was tough to hire women when we were surrounded by men, but every woman that came in has always kind of course, because I'm a female boss and I'm like this alpha female, right? Kind of, protective, and they all, there was a kind of code of conduct where you couldn't kind of speak to a woman anywhere. There was a way of kind of communicating, even if there's a conflict between, two managers or whatever, right? Two camps or whatever it would be. At Zorabian, at the factory, in our foods factory, we had, as we grew and grew and grew, we had so many, labor issues with people kind of, leaving and going to Gao and then not showing up. And we house a lot of our employees, right, at the farm. And I went to my dad and I said, why can't there be women in a foods factory? Don't women know how to cook really well? He's saying, nahi, wo nakha kar se. I thai, te chai, they have all these household issues, Perizaad. It won't happen. I'm like, no, Dad, let's try it. So the first thing we did is we tried getting like the first 10 women in to the factory. Of course, I accommodated their working hours, because, the fact is they're going to cook, their kids have to go to school, there were school buses organized to send them to school. But before they started, I went and I spoke to them and I'm like, listen, don't prove me wrong. I'm giving you the facility of doing this. But when you work, just give it your best. So it was so wonderful, that, I mean, even someone like my father, there'd be women in the garden and the gardeners and, cleaning the sheds, and they would do all of that. But why not in the foods factory where you really need the expertise of cooking? So, I mean, Sanjay, so whilst my experiences have always been so positive, I know, like you said, there is a problem. And as a leader, it's very, very important to kind of, address that and take proactive steps towards that.
Quite true. And I hear both of you almost resonating each other, where you've talked of confident women, families that rear you to become confident men and women. And secondly, I think thirdly, the whole issue of inclusion, while we can get numbers in, creating that inclusive environment. And when Perizaad talks of, going ahead and getting women in and having those conversations with them, I think that's where the inclusion begins. You may end up having diversity, but is that diversity of thought, action, age, gender? Really feeling that is probably one big question that we as leaders pose. And uh, I heard Perizaad talk of it. Sanjay, what do you uh, think is the biggest barrier to inclusion, not diversity? Diversity we can hire and promote and push. But what is the biggest barrier to inclusion?
So, so the biggest barrier to inclusion is recognizing that inclusion is good. So I'll give you 2 or 3 examples. So if you look at, so there are organizations that I'm part of, that I walk into, and then a whole boardroom is full of men. And I'm talking 20, 30 people, all men. And I'm saying, my God. And at times, the leader is not aware of, he's not, or it is a he, that's the reason why you've got 30 men in a boardroom. If you had Perizaad at the helm, you would have had far more, inclusiveness. So I think the biggest challenge is the leader recognizing that inclusiveness is good and is not a tick in the box or not something that one has to do. And I think the simple way that I articulate it is that all human beings are different. As long as you've got people with a similar set of core values and belief, if you've got 10 people with 10 different ways of approaching things and solving a problem, my word, how brilliant it is than having one person or having 10 people with the same kind of mindset, same kind of educational background, and trying to solve problems. So I think at the most fundamental level, if we have men and women in a room together, I think problem solving capabilities itself go up by a factor of 2. And then if you have men and women together with different educational backgrounds and different, from different parts of the country, then you're multiplying that capability several fold. So I think the biggest challenge is for leaders to recognize that inclusiveness is important. I go into investment banking and the whole financial sectors. Oh my God, the diversity ratios there are horrific, are absolutely horrific. And no one is, I think no one at the helm is bothered that that's important, that inclusiveness is important. So I think that's the first challenge. And then I think the next challenge is, once you recognize that that's a problem, what do you do about it?
I think like Sanjay said, right?
Yes.
I guess because so I had sales, marketing, operations, and distributions from the Bombay office, and my brother takes care of the farm, right? So obviously, I hire who I want. All my decisions are made by me. So I guess, when I'm hiring someone, I don't have a mental block. If my head of accounts right now is a woman, right, and she's hard ass and she's amazing, and she I mean, our cash flows have never been better. And initially it's always been a male dominated, and you think chicken hai, murgi hai, you have a crazy kind of client at sometimes, but I mean, she's a Gujarati female who's like rocking it. I think a lot of challenges with inclusion happen sometimes when and I love my female members of my team, and I kind of I feel very passionately about all of them, but I also give them enough grief when they kind of expect like certain privileges, or they kind of act like softies, because when there's a problem, I roll up my shirt, literally, and I've been here at 3:30 in the morning doing a dispatch with all the boys and with all my guys, and There is no, okay, I'm a woman alone at 3:30 in the morning with these bunch of drivers, helpers, operations managers. I need to understand the system, so I'm there. So I think every woman in a workplace, the minute, you know, it's in their mind, okay, I can't be here at 3:30 in the morning because it's not safe for me because I'm a woman. The minute that kind of block goes off your head, all the men working with you will take you seriously.
Brilliant.
Right? So, no one automatically respects me because I'm my father's daughter. They respect me because they know, दीदी अगर बोलेगी और अगर हम लोग बोलेंगे कि नहीं हो सकता है, दीदी तो पागल है, 3:30 भी इधर आके dispatch देखेगी, right? So I think a lot of that inclusion will happen when women also don't expect to be included by right because you're a woman, but more also by kind of playing the game equally. And that's what I'm always empowering the women in my team with. That please don't give me, don't cry at the drop of a hat when someone's shouting at you, right? So if I'm screaming at someone, the men will kind of take it, this thing, and the other one will start crying. I said, don't give me that emotional nonsense, please. I'm having an outburst, hear me out. You know what I'm saying? But react, just to be treated as an equal, you got to play the game as an equal. Is my kind of, and only when you play the game as an equal, will you be included. So you could be hired for the diversity number, but you'll be taken serious if you go and play the game as an equal.
So I think it's,
yes.
Again, listening to you, Perizaad, is, it's outstanding. And I'll tell you why outstanding.
Because I'm a girl and I can say it. You're a guy. If you say it, everyone will say you're not. You have no.
No. I'll tell you why. Because so many of the thoughts that you've articulated, my wife does so at home. Okay, and I think this is the new age. So I'm giving it a term. So forgive me for this. I think the new age empowered woman. So many women who first came into the workforce, and perhaps they were the pioneers, say 20 or 30 years ago. Many of them required to be, as she said, extra alpha to be counted in this, counted in a quote unquote in a male-dominated work environment. But I think what Perizaad is saying, and this is what Apurva says at home, is that women confident in themselves and confident of their femininity are able to have as much or more impact. So you don't need to be someone you're not. You don't need to have extra testosterone, to be successful. I think that's what I get from what you said, Perizaad, and it's just incredible. I think the more or the really successful women that I see today are proud of their femininity and are just proud of the difference that they bring to the table, and yet they put in just as much hard work and they don't expect any favors. And I think it starts from them more than anything else. So I think that's the reason why I just loved what you said.
Thank you.
One question I have for both of you, and while both of you have said that family upbringing makes the difference, what woman brings to the table in terms of confidence makes the difference. But there are tons and tons of us who probably have the capability but not the confidence. And what do we as leaders do to pull that set up? Finally, they are a hard reality and they are the ones who need to be pulled up, because people like you and me and many other women can, push themselves up. But what about the ones who are capable but still unable to fight that battle?
So can I take that first?
Please.
Since I'm the so
since you're the more,
I spend a lot of time.
No, since you're the more, what did you say?
No, since I'm the woman, you know what I mean? No. No, so, so I spend a lot of time as a leader, talking to the women, in my company, right? So whether it's, our accountants here, whether it's, our key account managers, whether it's the women working at the farm, so I kind of, so, I think to kind of give a woman confidence. Obviously, the base starts with how they've been brought up, but a lot of them, like you rightly said, have not had the privilege of that kind of mindset as they were young. They were always treated with disparity, all of that. But I think it's very, very important as a leader to, like address these issues with women from a position of strength rather than weakness, right? So someone who I love, if she thinks if I say something, when we have these large sales meetings and someone thinks it's personal and then that tears, I say, please don't cry. I will say it in front of everybody because I will strengthen that person and I will have a one-on-one talk with them later on that listen, this is not the way. So I think encouraging, talking, communicating, and telling them that listen, we girls don't do this, and it doesn't, it's not cool. We don't do this. And I think I cannot tell you how much I communicate that. And then everyone who kind of, um, achieves it, I kind of applaud that as well. So I do. The males in my office sometimes say, "Ma'am, you're very partial. You're only celebrating all the girls all the time." But I do try and hit a balance. And I'll be accused of actually the opposite. But I kind of counsel them a lot, is what I would like to say. Really.
Confidence or the lack of it, I think, is neither a women issue or a men issue. So I think all of us at different points in our time face crisis of confidence. And therefore so I think in my career, I've always had someone whom I could talk to, and talk about the issues that I face and help me navigate, the issues that I face. So I think that's the first that's one part about lack of confidence. I think for women especially, it is important because, in many families, women are taught to be part of the furniture rather than stand out, and boys are allowed to show their peacock feathers. So, in a sense. So I think the problem, therefore, is a little more acute with women at the workforce. And I guess the only way to solve it is to create mentors, to create first women role models, and mentor women right through the process. And I guess so. A lot of self-talk, a lot of role models, a lot of mentoring. I think that's a combination to perhaps assess to address issues of lack of confidence. But it is real, and I think needs to be addressed.
Another question actually to both of you, and you've both referred to it in bits and pieces. There are certain roles that are assumed to be roles for men, and there are certain roles, mostly caregiving kind of roles, that are assumed to be a stereotype for a woman. But leadership as a role is invariably, you say a leader and there is a picture of a man with a nice hat that dawns in your mind, and it's a stereotype issue. It is true for almost 80-90% of the population. How do we break that stereotype of roles being for women, leadership being for men, kind of a thing? It's something that I hear a lot of men and women both talk of.
So I'll start, if you don't mind, Perizaad, and I'll start off with my with my college days. So I was in an engineering college and engineering hostel. So the diversity ratio in an engineering college at that point in time would have been 595. Over the 4 years that I was there, it might have improved to 1090. and but still most of the girls used to go into uh, safer disciplines like electronics or chemical engineering and so on. I remember my junior, there was one girl who got into mechanical engineering. And one of the things on mechanical engineering is that we had to go into a workshop and do things with our hands. And I think in the 4 years that I was at engineering, I would have seen 3 batches above, 3 batches below. So 7 batches in mechanical engineering. In those 7 batches, I'm talking about now 300 people in a batch. So about 2,500 people. There would have been perhaps 2 or 3 women in the 7 batches that I. Those 2 girls were just as competent. I mean, they used to kick butt in workshop where it required, a little amount of harder labor, but it was not that hard that required, someone. I mean, it was perfectly manageable. So I think I'm telling you the story because the first is for women to believe that they can do great roles, irrespective of what the discipline is. I'll marry that now to say our business. So if you look at in operations so I'm very proud of, we've got one operations leader. Sharmishta is our operations manager, but we've got only one so in that whole leadership at her level and above, we've got only one woman leader among perhaps, and if I include both the brands, 20, 25, 30 people. So I think here so what do women want to get into? So if you want to finally, in an organization like ours, reach the very top, then you've got to go through a function that is central and core to the business, which is operations. So I think my invite here is for people to look at roles that are, I think anyone can do any role. We've just got to break the molds in our mind. We've got so while Deep is in HR and HR is how would I say, a more natural avenue for women. I'm using my words carefully. More natural avenue for women. On our leadership team, we've got Nandita, who handles projects. Now, I would say that Nandita perhaps is she's the one lady. I've never ever seen another projects leader who's a woman. So kudos to her to take a different bold step to veer into different territory. As Sharmishta, who's gone into operations, and she's, I think, doing a phenomenal job, and I'm sure bringing totally different perspectives to the to the whole to the whole environment.
Wow, that's inspiring, right? Because I think, Deep, I'm going to call you Deep because I keep wanting to say Sandhydeep, right? So I'm going to kind of, and I'm going to, once I have that one name fumble in my head, I'm going to keep kind of getting harrowed to say the name. But it's, so see, for as liberal as I imagine myself to be, and as Sanjay was speaking, all my core operation roles are all men, right? And you're right, maybe, so it's not even, so all the key account managers and even I think the head of accounts is woman, and I'm feeling very proud of myself. But yeah, I mean, wow, that would be a first. In terms of handling the kind of labor that we handle, all our production and operations heads are all men. And obviously, maybe in my head, that's, it's like a guy will handle these fellows better than a woman would, so that's again, so see, I mean, just hearing him, I'm like, shit, I don't have an operations manager that's a woman, or a projects head that's a woman. And maybe that's a bias in my head as well, right? Because you think that maybe, she won't be able to handle all these guys, whereas I can, which is yeah. So maybe, somewhere in our head we all have these um, dark areas where, we kind of have these preconceived notions, which I think deep, yeah, we've got to kind of break completely. Yeah, wow. Yeah. Thank you,
Perizaad,
Sanjay. Yeah.
so I think I was looking at a stat that Deep had given me. So in our stores, in our restaurants, so we've got nearly 30% women ratio at the team member level. Team member going to shift manager, the same ratio is maintained. Shift manager to the restaurant general manager or the head of the restaurant, from 30 it drops to under 5. So now I'm thinking, so it's not capability that is an issue. And I've gone into all women, I've gone into all women, restaurants where the shift is handled completely by women. So a morning shift would be handled by women. And you can perhaps feel the difference, in some manner. But there are clearly 30, from 30 you're coming down to 5, so people are dropping off. And I think that, like I said, they're not dropping off because of lack of capability, because they are at an important stage in their lives. Many of them, I'm sure, will be getting married, first time mothers. And if they're able to cross over that hump, I think then we'll have far more, people going up through the system. So I guess the one issue is for women themselves to believe, for leaders to believe that anyone can do a great job. So that is one. Number two, for women themselves to believe that I can do anything. And I've just taken a couple of examples. And I think the third part is for the organization and for organizations to actively understand reasons for drop-off. The same thing, incidentally, is happening even at our corporate headquarters. So we've got a lot of, women at entry +1, entry +2. And we've got 2 out of 10. So 20% diversity at the senior leadership level. But in between, there's a significant vacuum. And I think that's because we are not perhaps doing enough.
So I heard Chanda Kochar speak at an all-women's YPO event. And, she spoke so beautifully. And she said it's not that, women are not capable, but, we lose a lot of women the minute, like you said, Sanjay, one goes through that marriage, motherhood, so the ones that survive that are really able to kind of, take it to the next level. So I think, yeah, so it's less about capability. It's really more about, kind of surviving that, that bump. I mean, even I stopped acting, right? Yeah. So, it's because I tried, but, I couldn't afford to be on a set and have invariably, I used to travel for a shoot and my kid would be unwell, and then this is the guilt of that kind of, so then, again, then of course, I started working at Zorabian, but still, at Zorabian, if something goes wrong, I can leave and I can be with my child. But if I'm on a set and when I was kind of pursuing the acting bit, when my kids were really young, right? And it was just horrible. And I mean, so I did kind of, so whilst of course I created whatever, a space for myself at Zorabian, I definitely fell off not because of my inability or because the industry didn't want me back or any of that. I think it was my mental block that, what, I don't want to be on a shoot if, with a kid sick at home, right? So, and I live in a nuclear family. So yeah, important point.
Yeah.
I'm not as brave as I am then.
Even acknowledging that these are struggles that we go through, I think makes us a little more aware and little more brave than we imagine to be. And while both of you were talking about it, there was a question in the Q&A that came up where one of our area coaches is asking that, while he wants to build women as leaders within the system, there's a whole family that is trying to pull back the woman and saying, come back home by 8 o'clock, do not do this work, do not. So there is a whole parental pressure that women are subdued to, and therefore they end up hopping off that ladder. And that brings me to a very important question as to how do you raise, especially the Sapphire Foods family is listening to you, and I think they can be the biggest beneficiaries. How do we raise families to become a little more aware and sensitized to women working in the corporate world?
Sudeep, like I said, it's so important for parents to kind of, you know, build a little faith and confidence in their children, in their girls, and as much as in the boys, right? During when COVID hit last year, all the women on my team collapsed overnight. Besides two women, right, two young girls who kind of, and actually three. One was the ones coming to the office, and one was the mother of a young child, right? But besides that, all of them dropped off, and I was heartbroken, right? Because the men, here's someone who is like kind of a full woman, and to kind of have that happen to us, where we were so largely, female kind of dominated, was heartbreaking. I actually got on the call and spoke to parents, spouses of my, of my core team members to kind of drill some sense into them. But it was like hitting a dead wall, right? The guys were allowed to come into work, but the girls were not. Now, are you telling me a guy is not prone to COVID, but a woman is? So unfortunately, really at a parent level, there really needs to be a switch. And I think if one generation's missed it, and if, for example, the next generation needs to at least get a chance to learn. So if you've been the victim or whatever, not had the most supportive family who's kind of encouraged you, when you have a child, treat your children as equals, right? So at some point, the chain has to break. COVID hit. I was at the farm over the weekend. My dad is like, there is no need for you to go. Tara nalla bachcha hai. And I looked at Baman, my husband, and I'm like, babe, I need to get back to Bombay because I was there, for that weekend. And he looked at me and he says, you know what, everything's going to get shut down. The kids will be happy on the farm because, there's a large, farmhouse. So I'm like, okay, are you going to take me, or I'm going to jump on that chicken truck that leaves in the morning and I'm going to get to work? Because I knew what was going to happen at the front end, right? My husband, actually, because he was a bit scared, okay, Baba's this hugely successful businessman. He owns Rustamji. He doesn't need his wife to be at an office, right? He actually drove me to work to drop me the first day. My children saw my husband celebrating the fact that I was at work every single day. And when my children were scared, saying, oh my God, will Mama die of COVID? Because it was such a fear. Baman would celebrate it. He said, your mom, you'd make fun also. He said, my mom's like a mountain goat. Nothing will happen to her. But he celebrated what I did, right? And he had organized this dinner one evening for me with the kids kind of rapping and saying, Mama's the coolest chicken seller in town. So I'm just saying now, my children are going to grow up treating their children as equals because they're seeing their father treat their mother with so much of strength, right? And I think that's the only way we're going to be able to kind of get parents to, this. So So my dad, for as liberal as he is, and he was freaking out when I was. Of course, my mother was harrowing him that Perizaad's crazy, she's gone mad, bacha ne sut hase, because everyone was scared. But Baman kind of look at what he did. So I don't think my daughter or my son will ever treat their woman, their daughter different from their son because they've seen a father who's treated his wife. So he would actually tell my kids, okay, Papa is now Mama and Mama is Papa. Because, I mean, real estate was shut, Baman was working out of home. Baman was taking care of the online school stuff, which was always been my job, my responsibility. I've never not been there for an online, for a school, the orientation. But when a child sees that, there is no way in hell they are going to treat their, female and male children, kids differently. So I think the only way, to cut a long story short, would happen if it's too late to change your parents, but at least when you kind of bring up your children, you bring them up with a sense of equality.
Again, listening to Perizaad, so she comes from that.
My heart rate has gone up. I'm like,
no.
My heart rate has gone up.
No. So it's incredible. So she starts from saying, "What can I do?" That's I'm just kudos to you, Perizaad. So, but I guess So yes, it starts from women being confident and at the home and so on and so forth. But I think we have to, from the corporate side, we've got to recognize that everyone won't be a Perizaad, and therefore, I think to Sandeep, my invite will be that, first of all, do we believe that it adds value to the store to have diversity, to have different kind of people, also so women and men together? So if the answer there is yes, then as leaders, Sandeep, we have to work hard to ensure that the conditions are correct and are amenable for women to work. I'll give you 2-3 examples here. So in most stores, when I walk across and I see, I see women as team members, the question that I ask is, how far do you live? Number one. Number two, is this the first time that you are working? And number three, what do people at home tell you when, or what do people at home believe when they see you, in a Pizza Hut or a KFC, KFC uniform? And the answer to the third question is always, my family feels very proud. And yet for first time women workers, there is a significant amount of worry about safety. So I have a 27-year-old son and I worry about his safety, Perizaad. So and I can understand your dad still worrying about you. He's not being anything different from, being a caring dad. But I think we've got to respond to this. We've got to say that, how can we make it safer for that, that girl to travel back after 9 o'clock? Is there something that we can do? First time people into the workforce, can we ease them in through a morning shift? If we ease them through an evening shift, they're just bound to, to have problems. So I think the simple question, the simple point here is that we've got to work hard to continue, to make these team members and managers continue to work. And if necessary, if we've got to go across and speak to parents, we've got to do it. I'll give you another example. I think a long time ago, when we set up, the company that I used to work for, set up a factory in Baddi in Himachal. Now, many of the people there, we were among the first companies to set up a plant in Himachal. When we set up that plant, most of the locals had no idea of what it was to work in a in a manufacturing unit. So whether it was male or female, we had to go and first address and talk to the parents to say, this is what you can expect. Then bring parents down to the factory. Allow them to bask in the glory of their children. And then they will, be big supporters. So I think we've got to do work.
And just to add on to what Sanjay said, Sandeep, when after kind of reassuring everyone and doing of that, I had vehicles going and picking up the girls, getting them to work, and dropping them. So so that we could function. So whilst the guys would jump on bikes and kind of sort themselves out, all the women, members of my team, there were vehicles kind of going out, and getting them back in and dropping them back at the right time. So it was, and so yes, we did kind of, make an effort as a company to also kind of, just, put their families at ease. Okay, nothing's going to go crazily wrong at night or any of that. So yes, as a company, I think understanding that there is a bit of a apprehension with the families, and then kind of supporting that in times of in tough times is very critical.
Fair. So that probably brings me towards the end. I just have just about a few questions, and one a very, very sensitive one. And you two as leaders will definitely appreciate this question on pay parity. A lot of times, sometimes real and sometimes imaginary, pay parity for women, whatever level they are, unless it's governed by the government, we've got a lot of minimum wages that are there, leaving them apart. The concept of pay parity, how real is it and how possible is it to both of you?
Pay disparity, how real is
Whichever.
it?
So yeah, which is there, there is a thought that it is not comparable, and what do you as leaders have to say, and how do you kind of work towards that?
So can I take that first?
Yes.
Yeah. Sanjay can then think of his answer. Even as an actor, right? There's always this thing that, okay, the guys get paid more than the girls, and there's a big uproar about that. I've done, of course, but I haven't done like commercial movies. All my films have been offbeat, independent cinema, very barely. No one ever got paid really well. But there were times. So it was never about me getting paid less because I was the female lead versus the male lead. It was about how popular I was vis-a-vis my co-star, whether he was a man or a woman, right? So if I kind of did a film with Shabana Azmi, and we were both the leads, obviously Shabana Azmi was going to get paid more than I was going to get paid, right? But there have been films where I've got paid more than the male lead, right? Because I was maybe a far more senior actor than me, but I was just more commercially popular. So I think as an actor, in terms of the skew, it's always really been on what kind of the commercials that would work for the movie. In terms of Zorabian, now we're not some large professional, so we may have 650 to 700 people, but we're not some like fancy, hardcore corporate company, right? But all our salaries, there's no disparity between a man and a woman. So the guys working in my foods factory and the ladies working at the food factory, even though they have a couple of hours that have been kind of tweaked for them, the salaries are the same. So in Zorabian, but again, right, we're not like this gas corporate. We're kind of a chotu that way, so there's never been a you get paid as per the title and as per the budget that is a requirement, right? So if I'm looking for a head of accounts, does that person fit the budget, and does that person have the expertise that's needed, is what I look at when I hire any position across the board for Zorabian.
Yeah, well said. So I think I echo what Perizaad said, and really compensation or remuneration is based on the value of a role. So she talked about popularity. It's really what is the value that Shabana Azmi would bring, or someone else would bring, to the table versus anyone else. I think in the corporate world, you're hired to do a job, and therefore in my mind I've never ever thought about. I've never ever thought about that men should be paid differently or women should be paid differently. Roles are paid differently, and that role happens to be manned, or I'm using the word manned by either a man or a woman. So I would tend to believe that, at least what I've seen, there is full pay parity between men and women. And just to push this example a little further, so between me and my wife, so our careers are almost parallel, corporate careers. I would say in 75% of the case, she's earned more than me. 75% of our overlapping careers, she's earned more than I have done. So I think I'm sure she's far more competent, etc. So that's a given. So competence also plays a role here, Deep.
Yes.
More competent, and I think therefore she gets paid more. But like Perizaad has said that a lot of this disparity in pay has actually come through sport. So I remember all the conversations about how women athletes are not paid in the same manner as a male athlete. And there is where I struggle to really understand the logic, and I'll perhaps explain. So again, it really depends on where the value is, and commercial value is. And I think Perizaad so beautifully said it in her own example. So at a tennis event, at the Wimbledon, is the commercial dollars flowing from a viewership and advertising sense towards one part of the game that happens to be the men's game or the women's game, in which case one will be perhaps remunerated more. Now, it is like saying the Kabaddi stars must get paid as much as the Indian cricket team. Now, the Indian cricket team commercially brings in a very different value than the Indian Kabaddi team. So why don't we think about pay disparity there and say Kabaddi team also must get as much as paid? So I think that's the argument should be role. What is the commercial value that a person brings to that role, and therefore pay is in accordance with that. Whether there is a man or a woman handling that role is not important. Is
fair. I think that probably to the viewers and to the listeners should be really interesting as well as comforting, that at least the leader at Sapphire and the teams below truly believe that we are a very fair, equitable organization. The roles are bringing in what they're bringing in, and we are compensating what we're compensating to the best. Perizaad, to you, now that you've come here on this platform and we've got 100, 200 plus people who are listening to us, what would you say as one thing that you expect by the end of the program you would want us to leave with?
So what would make me happiest, besides the fact that I want all of you all to eat Zorabian chicken and nothing else, besides that very obvious point, what I would love is, on a more serious note, what I would love is when you go home and if you have like a daughter and a son, start with making them do all this, start with treating them as equals, right? And something as basic as, clearing the plates. If my daughter picks it up, my son has to pick up the plate as well. Start with that kind of equality, and trust me, these won't even be the conversations that we would have. If you have a wife that has a dream, or a spouse that has a dream of doing something, encourage them. I had my husband's friend's wife who was living in the society and was wanted. We were supplying Zorabian to these COVID. We were supplying to 100 societies during COVID. And so this Baman's friend calls me up and says, "Listen, Paisan, can XYZ supply, can we take it over and supply it, and she will handle it. But listen, she's never done something like this, so don't worry. My daughter will help her." I was so pissed off with that statement. I'm like, listen, your wife will do it, and your wife will do it very well. You know what? It's great that your daughter is helping her, but your wife, that poor woman has never had a chance in her life to do something. Right? I said, my team will deal with your wife. Your wife will handle it perfectly. You please don't worry. No, but just for safety, could you have the daughter also, on the chat? So each society had a chat with the business partner that we were kind of tying up with. I said, no, there's no need. She'll be absolutely fine. That same lady, which started off as supplying chicken to all members of her society, is now cooking and selling. Okay, and I mean, literally, I get goose flesh when I see that, right? So if every man empowers his wife, like Baman empowers me every single day, right? And if every man empowers his daughter and teaches his son the value of respecting a woman, none of these conversations will happen. Trust me. So if that should be the greatest takeaway, if all the men hearing this go and tell their wives and encourage them to do something, and kind of make the betas do as much as the betis, it would make my time with all of you really worthwhile. And may I also add, you guys are so lucky, and I'm not saying it like to be nice. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. You're so lucky to have a leader like Sanjay. He comes across as such a nice man to stand on this platform and say, you know what, I think my wife makes more money than me. I mean, seriously, you're a rock star. God bless you. It's amazing, amazing, really. I'm so happy that I took the time out to do this. Really, I am.
So I think we should end with Perizaad's words. So she summed it up beautifully. If I just extend that to the corporate world, it is, I think the one message that I'd like to leave all of our team members is that, first of all, recognize that inclusiveness is powerful. It will change it'll help further improve our business performance. So that is number one. So just believe that. When we get in diversity, when we get in specially abled stores, fully specially abled store, those stores work, and they work better. So that's the first thing, recognition that this is outstanding, number one. Number two is, what can I do to help the cause? And I can do many things. One is recognize that people have problems, small problems that I can solve. That a girl going back at 9 o'clock, there is a safety issue. So what can I do? What can I little bit do to ensure that she reaches home safely? Can I just speak to the parents? Can I get someone to drop her off, etc.? So small things can we do to make things easier. Can I mentor a woman through a difficult phase in her life, when she is getting married or when she's having a baby? So I think I'll encourage all of us to say, let me make a difference. Each individual makes a difference, and I think we'll be a better place as a result.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so encouraging, both Perizaad and Sanjay, especially Perizaad, to be able to take that time out, share. It's always nice to hear women who are successful, because that kind of inspires and aspires all the young women who are wanting to achieve something. And equally interesting to hear, Sanjay, to know that there is a leader at the helm who's supportive. So can't thank enough both of you. Thank you so much. The promise to the listeners here is that we've started this journey, and we're not going to end it anywhere soon. It is a long haul that we are in, and we're going to stretch stringent targets for us. Both being diverse and inclusive is what my promise to you as your CPO is. Thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Perizaad.
And can I say thank you to you, because you have been absolutely fantastic. Sanjay, she's so like focused, and she's so like, she knows what she wants, and she knew that, she kind of really wanted to communicate and get this, she feels very passionately about the subject, about diversity, about inclusiveness. And again, Sandeep, proud of you, really
Thank
awesome.
you.
It's
Thank
all here, and Sapphire Foods is in good hands with you heading HR. Really, God bless you. Really, lots of love. Great success.
So from my end, thank you, Perizaad. Just lovely to have you and chat with you.
It's been fabulous to chat with you, really. And I hope to meet with you soon.
Yeah, you come across as a wonderful human being, and it's been a pleasure to sit down and chat with you. We will connect. So
and I will take you to my farm and make you meet my father and all the crazy Zorabians. That would be wonderful. Yeah. So I will organize that through Sandeep. But thank you, and God bless.
And thank you, Deep, Amrita, Veenu, for making this happen.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Take care.
All
lots
right,
of love and lots of success. Continued success.
We need it. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.